Joe Mullings here with the MRI Network. Today we're on with Darwin Shurig. He's the president of Shurig Solutions in Indiana. In fact, in Plainfield, Indiana. Where's Plainfield?
We're on the west side of Indianapolis,
Okay,
just west of the old airport and new airport area.
got it. And so is there to call out Plainfield instead of Indy? What's the reason for that?
To call out Plainfield,
Yeah, instead of Indy.
I don't know. I mean, I tell most people, I'm from Indiana, from Indianapolis area, but I think when MRI went with the titles, they wanted me. I don't know if there's some legacy pieces there, but it was either MRI of Mooresville or MRI of Plainfield, and I went with Plainfield.
Got it. Got it. Well, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I really appreciate you having me on.
You bet. And so your office, you specialize in the medical device industry and in particular regulatory, qual, and some other areas?
Yes. So the business was started focused on med device. That's probably about 75 to 80% of the areas that we focus on. Started in quality, and then quality engineering, and then regulatory affairs was added about 2.5 years ago. So those are essentially the three main buckets that we focus on. We also do some pharma business, which is more focused on engineering and quality. We don't do the regulatory piece on the pharma side at this point.
Got it. And so medical device is a very specific marketplace. Why did you pick med device?
So I would say a big part of that, with my clinical background and some of the companies that I had worked for, I had the opportunity to be a part of the Respironics, the Philips Respironics team that brought a transportable ventilator over to the United States from Europe. And so that was a really unique and neat experience. And so just have an interest and a passion in terms of that particular space, and just felt like that would be a good place to focus on. I really wanted to focus on positions that would bring value to inpatient populations. And I thought that my clinical background and interest in wanting to bring value from a patient care standpoint, when I used to do that, I feel like most people that are in quality, product development, regulatory, they care about the end product, and they care about the work that they do and how it benefits patients out in the marketplace. So that it just made sense.
So you come out of the medical device industry, you were a successful executive in the medical device industry, and then in 2015, you suddenly said, time out, I'm going to go be a headhunter.
Just like that. I mean, it's like dreamed for years, right? So if I would have known you 6-7 years ago and you'd have said to me, hey, Darwin, I think you're going to be a recruiter, a headhunter, whatever name you want to use, or own a recruiting company, I probably would have hurt myself laughing at you. I never in a million years thought that we'd be sitting here talking, or I would be doing this. I was in my 12 years in the corporate world, working for different medical companies for sales oversight, management, business development, marketing. I went through multiple mergers and buyouts. So I came to a very large company via acquisition after a couple of years of what sort of seemed like working two jobs, helping through that process of integrating two $2 billion business units. A few weeks after that, they laid off quite a few people from the old company. So that was an interesting time, and really a great opportunity for me to take a step back and think about what the next step was going to be. And that really was an exciting time, because I had a friend that I'd known for a long time, Dave Dart,
Sure.
and didn't really totally understand what he did in terms of the business side of it, right? I mean, obviously I knew he was a recruiter, his name's in it, so he's a part of the ownership. But he shared the MRI opportunity with me, and over a couple of months period, it was a great time in the marketplace, because there were a lot of opportunities from an interviewing standpoint. And at the same time, I was looking at this business opportunity, and at the end of it, I just really didn't want to go back and work for somebody else. And I felt like there were a lot of aspects of recruiting in terms of, sharing a service, a product or a service, in terms of what I did previously, mentoring and helping people grow their careers. There were a lot of crossover skills that it could make sense for me and that might be able to make it successful.
So you opened up Playing Field, MR Playing Field, and it's always the question I like to ask. You're a mid-career guy. You're rocking it. You worked at Phillips and McKesson, and you're this executive who probably had some nice spiffs. And that very first day sitting down, putting on the headset.
Yeah, it's surreal. I oftentimes have said that it's one of those scenarios where if you knew everything that was going to happen and that you needed to know 6 months out right now, I'd probably still be in the corner sucking my thumb and nothing would have happened, right? Because there's just so much. And starting out at home does it feel as much like a business, right, as if you're going to a building, and in terms of what that looks like. So I started out at home the first 6 months, and I think the fact that through my career previously, I didn't go to a building. I had a home office, a lot of travel involved, and so having experience sort of working through that, and I think for the wrong type of person, you can kind of hang yourself, in that situation. The right type of person, you could probably actually work too much because you never shut it down. But those experiences, I think, helped me, maneuver that, to manage that process successfully. But, starting out recruiting, there's a lot of challenges, right? It's not significantly, there's certain aspects of it that aren't necessarily hard, but it's not easy. And I use the old Holiday Inn Express, commercials that I always found entertaining. But it's like, how long have you been recruiting? Hey, can I help you fill your director position? Sure. How many, have you filled? Well, I've been a recruiter at least 2 days, right? I've never filled any. So who you are, nobody knows who you are. Trying to understand how you can fit in the marketplace, what your value prop is. And there's a process to that, right? It doesn't happen overnight. So it's challenging. You've got to have, you certainly have to be okay with no, and there's a lot of rejection involved at first, I think.
So you start in 2015, you run a successful business based on your numbers. And there's some new owners that might be watching this 12 months into this. And what is the most important thing today that you underclubbed back then? And what is the least important thing that you thought was so important back then?
That's interesting. So I'll with the first question, I think, there's certain aspects of owning a business, right? There's a vast percentage that, my accountant tried to talk me out of doing what I was doing. A couple friends did. And when you look at the hard numbers, it can obviously be frightening. There's a lot of people that don't succeed. There's a lot of failure out there. So having, a determinedness, having a goal, having a strategy, being able to execute all those things, right, are obviously important. But outside of those, I think the two things, and I've had the opportunity to speak to new MRI owners at different times, or been asked to, and I typically say the same two things. I don't care, what you do or what your dig is, but you really need to be focused on learning every single day and understand your industry. I am surprised how often I talk to candidates and they talk about, somebody that's reached out to them, or recruiters that don't really understand the marketplace, and they don't necessarily understand what they do or what the skill set relevant to the position is. So, that's key. You've got to understand you cannot bring value to companies or candidates if you don't understand the industry and what's going on in it. So you have to be constantly learning and growing there.
What do you do to learn? Do you do a lot of reading? Do you ask a lot of questions? Do you engage in the conversations?
I just love talking to people. I've learned so much because the bottom line is you're talking to really intelligent, talented, educated people every single day with unique experiences. So every single day I learn from candidates.
And they like to be asked too. They like to be asked questions, don't they?
Absolutely. if you're doing all the talking, there's a problem, right? But when I first started, I would just I think transparency is huge. I think how you bring value to other people. My focus every single day is how do I bring, whether it's a client company's conversation or it's a candidate, how do I bring them value? And how do I learn enough about who they are, what they've done, and what they want to do, that first conversation can turn into a second. And then at some point, whether it's not right now, but at some point down the road, I can bring them value by bringing them a position or sharing, something that helps them. So, for me, when I first started, I would tell a candidate, hey, they would say something, CPK, or it's statistical process controls in a certain reference. Hey, I'm newer to this. I know what that is. I don't really understand how that correlates with this. And they just start sharing and talking, and you start connecting the dots. And so that's a big piece of it. Reading, I'm an avid reader. I would say this last year, I could be wrong on this. Probably 90%. I was at the Regulatory Affairs Professional Conference in Philadelphia. I'm pretty sure I was the only recruiter there that was there as an attendee and not a vendor. So, I went there to learn, and I'll be, at the conference again this year. I think going to conferences, understanding what's going on in terms of quality, what's going on, the MDD MDR transition right now. You have to understand so that you can understand what their problems are, and that you can communicate in the right way and determine how you can bring people value.
And what did you think that was important that absolutely wasn't important?
Two things. I thought that it would be harder to get initial contracts and to get jobs. Now, I don't want to, it's not getting a good agreement, right? That's mutually beneficial versus just getting any agreement. Yeah. That's a whole different story. Right. But I thought that would be, maybe a little bit harder than what it was. I think the other thing that surprised me is in terms of, we've got some clients that are, top 20, top 30 global medical device clients, mid caps, startups. And I think companies have the same challenges, right? The people that are responsible for bringing talent to companies and vetting, they all have the same challenges. And it's a $150 billion industry, but in an industry where nobody really wants to pay a recruiter, generally speaking, if they could do it themselves. And so I think it surprised me a little bit how most companies have the same challenges, and you can have a talent development recruiter, whatever title you want, but more than likely it's an HR generalist that either doesn't have the skill or the bandwidth or both to do much more than look at resumes and manage the day-to-day process versus actively networking and recruiting. I think that was a bit of a surprise to me.
Got it. I want to shift gears here. In your bio, it says you're a triathlete. Are you still training?
I have not done a triathlete in a couple of years now.
Okay.
So
do you still bike, run, or swim?
I still do. I ruptured my Achilles on my left foot last year and had surgery in April. So that was a little bit of a setback, but I'm healthy and started working out. I'm running again over the last month. So
got it.
My goal is to do some more triathlons.
What was your best event out of the three? Run, bike, or swim?
None of them. Just, finishing. When I first started to do triathlons, I'd never really biked, wasn't a swimmer, and really never thought I'd do a triathlon because I couldn't imagine sitting on a bike that long. Yeah. And the funny thing about it is I love the swimming and the biking. And I love being outside biking. The swimming's just so, cathartic and, just thinking, and you get into a rhythm, and it's just such great exercise in all aspects of your body. I think the swimming piece, you can do it for so long, but, I'll tell you, the first Olympic I did, I was like,
Oh, so you're legit. You did an Olympic. Okay.
I've done 2 halves.
All right.
So I haven't done full Ironman, but I've done 2 halves.
So explain to the audience the half. So it's 56 miles on the bike?
So yeah, so you start out with the swim, which is
Mile.
a mile and a third, essentially swimming, and then it's 56 miles on the bike, and then it's a 12 and a half run,
Right.
mile run.
Right.
So it's
No naps in between.
there's there's cramping. Usually for me, there's cramping, but there's definitely no naps.
Yeah.
And when I first started, one of the shorter ones, actually, I think it was a sprint. And I remember being there, it was in Greensburg, Indiana, and there's not a whole lot of people there. And I thought, like I'm going to win my age group. Like I'm in great shape. I'm ready for this.
Right.
And I think I got last.
Yeah.
And I was probably the youngest. Everybody was older than me. And I was
Right.
like, man, I got creamed. And my buddy's like, yeah, they don't have kids like you. They got nothing to do but train.
Right.
I was like, oh, okay.
Right. Right.
So anyway,
Yeah.
for me, it's really just about the process and about finishing.
Mm-hmm.
So
And it's a lot like recruiting. And I asked that about the triathlon because it's a lot like recruiting. It's the process and it's just finishing, because most of the people will quit on the search too early or stop having an interest in the search too early, when realistically you just needed to put in a couple more hard days and you could finish.
absolutely. I think it's interesting. I always say that as you start a search, every day it evolves. If you're working it, if you're having conversations, and you're going to identify areas where maybe your client doesn't understand something or is looking at something where you can bring information back and maybe adjust the search,
Mm-hmm.
or they have a certain perception. And as you're talking to candidates, you realize relevant market data that it changes.
Yeah.
So certainly it changes every day. It progresses.
Yeah. I want to jump into a subject that is related, and I think it speaks to who the MRI family is. And if you want to spend a minute on it, great. If you don't, you can just wave me off. You're a respiratory therapist, and you've been volunteering in the hospital because you've got a background in respiratory therapy and also, I'm sure, knowledgeable on ventilators. And you've been serving people in that form for a bit now since COVID started.
Yeah, so I've been a registered respiratory therapist since 1994, and started out clinically before I then got into sales and the corporate world, so to speak. So when I first started my business, I would see home ventilator patients and then work at the hospital to help keep the lights on, and until the business started making money, and then had not worked clinically since 2016. And when this first started, it was, it's obviously an interesting, challenging time for a lot of people in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this pandemic, if it would have happened, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I don't know if as a business I'd be able to make it through it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people that are obviously having a lot of challenges from that standpoint. So I'm very grateful where we're at, how we've grown, and that not only will we make it through it, but we're actually still making placements and bringing value to clients and candidates during the pandemic. But when it first started, I kind of had a little bit of selfishly a relief, myself, my family, that, I could have been on the front lines in the past for something like this. But then after a period of time, I talked to my family, my wife, it's all about bringing people value, right? So how can you sit at home and be safe and, be fine when other people are hurting? There's not enough respiratory therapists to manage the ventilators. I have a little bit of a bias because you hear all these things in the news, and it's focused, and nothing against everybody's working hard and everybody's valuable, but physicians and nurses and EMTs and paramedics. But from my perspective, you don't hear a lot of mention about the respiratory therapists, and they're the ones that are managing the vents and helping people, not only go on the vents, but managing getting them off the vents, right? So I just made a decision that for me, I needed to go back, and I'm working a couple days a week at the county hospital until the pandemic's over, because I just think it's the right thing to do. Yeah. And it's been amazing, the teamwork, the people. It's such a challenging situation, right, in a lot of different ways, but it's just been amazing for me to be a part of teams. I mean, the physicians, the nurses, everybody mm-hmm. is coming together. There's a lot of positive things going on, even though there are a lot of tough things. And it's easy to focus on the tough things, right? But personally, I'm a glasses half full mentality type of person. And so I think that's great. A lot of the positive things that are going on and the things that people are doing for other people during a challenging situation.
It's awesome. And thanks for your going back to your service. That you're right, the respiratory therapist. You guys are intubating people, and you're right there leaning in on that ventilator, right?
It's an important piece,
Yeah.
right? Because I mean, you can have circulation, but if you're not ventilating, it's not going to matter, right? So it's an important service. It's an important aspect. Nobody, and I've had this conversation with a couple different people, but nobody wants to go on a ventilator. And you go on a ventilator for the purpose of giving your body the opportunity to heal, so that you don't hurt yourself, or it gives you an opportunity to shut things down so the body can heal, and then you can come back off when you can breathe on your own again for a short period of time. Or you have people that have neuromuscular or quad, some sort of accident where they have to be on it long term. But for the most part, you don't want to be on a ventilator any longer than you have to be. So understanding that process, understanding how to wean the patient off, make sure that they're getting the type of proper ventilation that they need, it's important. Every respiratory therapist that's out there that's working is absolutely right in the middle of it, and they're in a position where they could be affected by the virus, and they're doing important work. So I salute all the people that are on the front line and all the people that are working, but obviously I have a bias for the respiratory therapists. I think they do a great job. So.
Got it. So how are you managing your business now? And more importantly, do you think it changes the way you're going to run your business post-COVID?
That's a great question. It's when this first started, we've been making certain changes and trying to grow our presence and how we share that presence in the marketplace in the last 2 years, year and a half. It's definitely changed.
How so?
Well, so the first 2 to 3 years that my business started, it was really, we didn't have a social media. I'm not really somebody who loves social media. I'm not going to be on Facebook. I got on LinkedIn because I needed to get on LinkedIn. It made sense, right? But it's probably not one of my strengths. And I would say our growth all been based on blocking and tackling, picking up the phone and just working, right? Trying to work hard, trying to work smarter as you learn what works and what doesn't work. But about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, Liz brought on an office manager who that's a strength of hers. We started, having more of a social presence, started doing videos. So we're starting to try, starting to get more of a following on some of the things that we're doing. And it's been exciting to watch that grow. I think I shared with you previously, you're like where we want to get someday, right? Our videos it's not quite the same scale, but we're trying to integrate that, figure that out. Another thing that we've been in the process of putting together since the beginning of the year, that we haven't done the first one yet, but we're very close, is to start a podcast.
Awesome.
Where we can start doing 1 or 2, maybe a month, where we're having, VP of Regulatory Affairs, Director of Quality Assurance, people in the marketplace and in the niche that we are focused on, and doing interview types of scenarios where what's something that's going on in the marketplace that's important, what has their career development been, sharing some information that others that are in that industry can look at and gain value from, and maybe learn some insights. So that's something that we're working to add. We're I think mapping our marketplace better in terms of where we want to continue to grow and bring value. We're doing a better job of that, and then also creating more automations. So we had we pretty much doubled in size last year. We were off to a great first quarter, and certainly some of our clients that have more surgical devices and procedures, a lot of that is shut down right now. So our pharma and IVD medical device clients are really the only ones still hiring. So we're focused on bringing them value. And then I think that we've trying to get, I think it's like in a time where there's a lot of challenge and trouble, it's like, how do you call people up as a recruiter? Or so I think there has to be, you have to have some empathy. You have to have some, you have to be smart about how you reach out to. So we're still reaching out to people. I've tried to focus on the companies that are still hiring, that fit into where we're at, and just say, hey, look, how are you guys doing? I know it's a tough situation. You're probably not really interested in hearing from somebody that recruits right now, but this is who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And we do have companies that we're helping right now. So if there's anything we can do for you, so we're doing some of that. We're focusing on, we have some positions that maybe we wouldn't normally do that we're working on right now, but we had some goals this year financially, and one of those was to go over $1 million in billings for the year.
Still early in the year, Darwin. Don't give it up. Don't give it up. Don't fall into that.
Any adjustments.
I'm going to come out there and I'm going to hunt you down. Your medical device, you've got the best industry in the world.
So we haven't made any adjustments. We're just trying to figure out,
all right.
To be smart and efficient during this time, be a little bit, maybe even more creative.
Mm-hmm.
I really think that there's going to be this little lull.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very grateful that we still have positions. We've made a couple of placements in the last few weeks. We still have things we're working on, and I'm grateful for that. At the same time, I think we're going to come out of this sooner rather than later. And then there's going to be a whole lot of people that have, sort of been frozen.
Yep.
There's an uncertainty, right? There's a lot of positions that are put on hold because of the financial challenges, the marketplace, but we're going to come back out of that. And then all of a sudden people are going to be like, hey, we got to get these positions filled. So I think third quarter, fourth quarter has an opportunity to be, significant.
You'll get your mill. Listen, double down on your social as we go out here. Double down on your social right now.
Okay.
Figure out what you can do on social, because you got all these eyes on you at home. You obviously know the industry. You come out of the space right now that COVID is centered in, but don't make your content around COVID. But double down on your content on social. You present extraordinarily well, and you have a subject matter expert to you. Look at hiring somebody as well. Right now, there's probably some really good recruiters on the market. Look at hiring them, because you're lucky. And again, because I work med tech too. There's so much suppressed elective surgery that's going to come back online that you want to be there having the resources that you can throw them at the searches and not be happy just that things came back online, but instead double down. So make sure, if you've got the extra gas in the tank and the dry powder, do it. It'll be worthwhile for you.
Okay. Well, that's definitely something that's part of the challenge from a scale standpoint, right? Is finding the right people.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think in terms of how we've grown and we're continuing to grow, getting the higher level searches, starting to get engaged in retained searches the last 1.5 to 2 years. It's really a matter of how do you duplicate that? Because that's sort of the next step, is to bring in a couple of recruiters that can match our value prop and be a good fit. So I appreciate that advice.
And now's the best time to train. Think about what a training curriculum. You would probably put off some of the best training right now than ever, because you're not as busy on your desk. So keep all that in mind right now.
No, I appreciate that.
Go on offense.
Good point.
All right. Listen, this has been fantastic. I appreciate it. If I could be any assistance to you, I know, because we work in the same space, happy to sidebar with you on anything at all I can offer.
You're in Florida, right?
I'm in Delray Beach.
Okay. Well, I don't know how quick I can get down there, but I'll take you up on that.
Dude, come on down. Come on down. Seriously, come on in. We're an open book. Come on in. We can do a podcast together. Let's do a podcast together.
I'm going to hold you to that.
Do it.
So, and as I said before we got on here, I mean, I've been my second year, found out who you were, been watching your content and your video. And when we got to connect on LinkedIn a couple of years ago, that was pretty exciting. So I really appreciate, very humble, and appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today.
Let's do it, my friend.
All right, I'm in.
All right, I'm going to be watching the numbers at a mill. I'm up your ass if you don't.
You got it, man. Stay safe and healthy. I
will.
Appreciate it.
Be well. This is
Okay.
Joe Mullings with the MRI Network.